Hello and welcome to the Jackcast, the Swansea City podcast. I'm Guto, and with me, as always, we have Steve Carroll and Matt Barocco. Evening, boys.
Evening.
Well, we've got a couple of games to look back at. One game to come up on the weekend against Plymouth to look ahead to. And we're also going to have a bit of Wales talk as they return to action for the first time since the Euros. But, boys, there is only one place to start, and that is with the Swans' first league win of the season, Friday night under the lights at Ashton Gate. Steve, did you have a good night?
Yeah, it was very enjoyable, to say the least. I think one of the best away games since we've been relegated. I would say it was bouncing. Just looking round, it was full of men, let's be honest. There weren't many women or kids there. The atmosphere was amazing for the entire game. And then the win was an added bonus, really. So, yeah, a night that will live long in the memory, I think.
Matt, what is it? There are a couple of elements that just add to a great away day, isn't it? The fact that Bristol City is close is obviously, it helps it. But I remember people speaking the same way about the QPR match a couple of years back when Cooper just joined us. We went up there and won 3-2 on a Tuesday or Wednesday night in August. Again, under the lights in August, big crowd there. It had all it needed was the result really to make that a really special night, wasn't it?
Yeah. And I think the idea of an evening game where you've pre-planned your travel means you've got potentially a day of drinking ahead of you, which, let's be honest, is a big bonus, is a big factor. Listen, we by the time we got to down by Bristol Harbour, Swans fans were banned from like 3 or 4 of the pubs down there because of groups of kids kicking off or causing trouble of some sort, I think. But we went there to see what had actually happened at that point. But definitely, there was so much. It was an atmosphere. Before I got on the train in Swansea, there was an atmosphere in town, and it really was like one of those things where I was standing in the middle of the day in town thinking, this is going to be electric tonight. And I could tell from the top of High Street, because everyone who walked past was just drinking and chanting. And this, like I say, was lunchtime. So it was, it just went on, as Steve said, really. There was a lot of men and a lot of drinking and a lot of maybe the younger generation as well, the early 20s and stuff. A lot of them were around and turned up. So everyone was there for an atmosphere. Everyone was there, to make themselves heard and seen. And the whole night was just wild. It was really, really electric atmosphere. And Bristol City, especially in the lead up to the game, they played their part. They lined the streets and shouted abuse, but they never offered any actual threat. They were just kind of, shouting abuse and getting it back and stuff. So I think like you say, there's a lot of factors that in play that make it a special atmosphere. But anything that involves a trip which you're not driving a vehicle for and a lot of drinking is the start of a recipe, I think.
There is something special about a good away day. There really is. At the start of the match, Steve, it's fair to say I think Bristol City looked the more dangerous of the two teams, but what was it, 17 minutes in, something like that, Joe Pirro getting his second goal of the week. And it's one of the best 1-2s that you'll see this season, I think.
Yeah, you don't see many of them, do you? I mean, I was thinking about this. It's very rare that we'll have a shot and it'll get parried or hits the post, and it the rebound sort of falls nicely for us, which was quite nice to see, really. But Pirro's had a nice little dribble. Obviously, the first one's a decent finish. It's a bit unlucky it's not gone in. But then, to be fair, you could tell he was alert. It was like a goal scorer's instinct of, right, it's not gone in. Where's the ball going to come in it? Obviously, it fell to him, and he did the rest, really. And it was certainly a wild goal celebration. I think there's been a few videos of them doing the rounds, but it was pretty mental in there when that went in. It was nice for us to finally have a meaningful goal, wasn't it? Because I feel like at Blackburn, we got one back, but we were 2-1 down, and then obviously the goal against Stoke, where we're 3-0 down. We're not coming back, obviously, but obviously we've gone in front now for the first time this season in the league, so it was quite nice to have that moment. Really, I think we've all waited more than long enough for it.
Yeah, and like Steve said there, it was the first time that we've led in a league game under Russell Martin. How do you think we coped, Matt, with that new challenge? Because that does pose different challenges to what we've had to deal with in every other game this season.
Yeah, I think by and large we did fine. There were obviously a couple of moments, but we could have equally extended our lead as much as Bristol City could have got back into it. I thought we were, we showed the same sort of signs that we wanted to, dominate the ball and really starve the opposition of possession, even if Russell Martin disagrees and labels it as the worst performance since he got here. But the players found a way. I thought Ethan led was fantastic, and in the middle of the park as well, I thought we did very well. Generally speaking, I wasn't overly concerned. I know sometimes when you're watching the Swans, particularly if you're watching them live, you're a bag of nerves. You're chewing off the end of your fingernails, aren't you, blowing for the final whistle and stuff. But I don't recall that really happening. There was a lot of singing and a lot of bouncing around going on in the away end, but there wasn't a massive amount of nerves. So I just taken from that and my inebriation that means that we did all right. So I think it was fine.
And who stood out for you, Steve? Because there were a couple of new faces that were getting, the first real chance in the first team from the start. Was there anybody that really did, catch the eye?
I mean, to be fair, I thought most of the players did well. I wouldn't want to, criticise anyone. I thought maybe Cullen was probably one of the weaker links. I mean, I don't think he was as influential as maybe some of the others, but I thought Grimes had a good game. It was quite interesting seeing Manning play at the centre of a back three, but I understand that decision because he's probably better on the ball than a lot of the other players. So I thought that was an interesting choice, and he did well. Ethan Laird did really well, especially in the second half. I thought he was quite lively. Seems to have a bit of pace about him as well, which, if we're honest, is something we've been crying out for. So I think he deserves a special mention. But in all fairness, I think most of them did at least pull their weight. It was a good performance, and obviously we've had to make changes again, haven't we, because of COVID. I mean, Ben Cabango and Flynn Downs are the latest that have had it. We were still without Cal Norton and Ryan Bennett, although they are now back. So to be fair, it's not been easy for us over the last couple of weeks. They have had to be chopping and changing, and some players maybe playing in positions that they're not best suited to. So I think all things considered, we've got to be quite happy with what happened on Friday night, really.
And Steve, I mean, did you see a big difference between what we saw in Ashton Gate then and what we've seen generally, say, over the course of the first 3 games of the season against Blackburn, Sheffield United and Stoke? Was there sort of a clear change in that match, or were we doing a lot of the same things, just we happened to win this game?
I think that the big thing I would say really was the lack of mistakes. I mean, there were, at Blackburn, we did make quite a few mistakes. We could have lost by more up there, if we're being honest. Sheffield United was reasonable. Against Stoke, we did concede a couple of soft goals, at least, especially the ones from set pieces. So we did look harder to score against, really. I mean, we didn't give the ball away as cheaply in certain areas. So I think that's where we did improve. And as Matt said, really, I mean, they didn't really ask us a massive amount of questions. I mean, they did put us under a little bit of pressure, but I mean, they had the offside goal, didn't they? But I honestly don't think that we were in a great deal of danger, although obviously when you're only 1-0 up, there's always a little bit of a concern that the game can change quickly. But I thought the main thing, like I said, lack of mistakes, which was a good thing because we have made some in other games, and I think that's really what's cost us points.
And Matt, looking ahead, we've got that all-important first win on the board now. Those first 3 points, that monkey's off our back now. What can this do now for the team? Do you think the pieces are there for us to kick on now and build on that result?
Well, we talked about this in the last podcast, didn't we? When we were looking ahead to the Bristol game, and I remember saying then that it's important just to win the game, not for Russell Martin or the players per se, but for everything around the club, for the mood around the club, just to be able to take away that pressure, because the external pressure and the negativity that we saw in the stands in the Stoke game and stuff like that, a ridiculous overreaction in that game. This just takes that away, for another 2-3 weeks. So it gives the players enough time to bed back in and to work more on the ideas and stuff without the external pressure adding to it. So that was what I was looking for in the Bristol City game, was just to register the win, just to take all the externals away, and then they can focus on what they're doing. So whether Russell Martin says it's the best performance or the worst performance, I think secretly and into himself, he'll be delighted he's just got the win, because it does just take that pressure off. Yes, we've had a couple of cup wins already, but this is the bread and butter, and this is the one that Swansea aren't the story now. We've got a win on the board. It's an impressive away win as well, and we can kick on from there. And more importantly, the pressure externally isn't looking on us to see if we're all cave in and we'll be without a manager in October. So that's the important thing. And it's down to the players and the manager now to use that as ammunition going forward.
Yeah, and you could see, couldn't you, the response from Russell Martin, how much it meant to him. It was important that he got that win, and it just makes things look much better now on the table, and gives him that little bit of breathing space again. Like you said, just takes any pressure that was maybe starting to come there from certain quarters. It just left that. He's got 4 points on the board from his first 4 games. I think we would have probably taken that before the season started. Swan sitting 16th in the table, quite a few teams below them who, like you said, are going to be drawing the attention of the media and different opposition fans, etc. It just makes things much easier going forward now that first win is under our belt, and it's an away win as well, which obviously means so much more. I think it's just getting that first away win can be difficult for some teams, so to get that on the board at the same time, brilliant job. The Swans followed that up, Steve, with another win over a West Country side, this time League One Plymouth in the Carabao Cup now. Jesus Christ. You were there at the Swansea.com stadium on Tuesday night. What were your overall impressions of the performance from the Swans?
I mean, there were good moments in patches. I mean, we kept the ball well. I think the result was probably a little bit of a surprise in the end, because we were reasonably comfortable, and then we've conceded, and we did look a little not so good after that. I thought, to be honest, it was going to go to a penalty shootout, but one moment of quality really from Morgan Whittaker changed the game, and then obviously we've ended up winning fairly comfortably. So there were a few players that I thought did quite well. I mean, Carl Joseph playing in a wing back role, which was a little bit of a surprise. But I thought he looked quite good. That was an encouraging performance from him. Daniel Williams obviously got the goal. I think he did fade slightly in the second half, but I mean, he's still really young at the end of the day. I thought he showed his quality. I think there's a player in there. Just going to have to be patient with him, really. If I'm honest, I didn't think the front two did great, but then Whittaker has popped up with a hat-trick in the end, so that maybe that one goal sort of changed it for him, and he did look like a more confident player then. And Lowe wasn't brilliant either. He did go on a great run to set up the third goal, and the layoff was spot on. So yeah, I think rather for those guys, maybe it wasn't like the dominant performances, but they had moments or key moments in the game that then obviously affected it. So yeah, I think it is good to see us obviously chip in with goals. And then, I mean, earlier I said that I didn't think Cullen was brilliant at Bristol City, and then you look at Whittaker, has got a hat-trick, may well have played himself into contention now for the game on Saturday. So, and that's what you want really from these games. You want players who are, not playing regularly to go into the team and do well and give the manager a little bit of a selection headache. And you're looking at it now, I think Whittaker may have done that.
Yeah, and the important thing, of course, is that Swans won. They're through to the next round of the Carabao Cup. We are recording this before the draw, so we can't really comment on who we're going to get yet. But yeah, they avoided a potential upset against a lower league team. And got the job done, and a couple of fringe players got a few minutes. But Matt, the important thing, the vital thing that we're going to be discussing from Tuesday night's match is the fact that Swansea have finally got a hat-trick. After more than a decade of waiting, we finally scored. One Swansea player has scored 3 goals in a single game. amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, and I, I can't take anything away from Steve because he was at the stadium and I wasn't. But I've never heard in the football before the term "popped up with a hat trick." It sounds so nonchalant. It sounds like he's just turned up and got the end of a cross 3 times. But they were great finishes, weren't they? I've looked at them back and on the highlights and seen that all his finishes. Now, I can't comment on the all-round performance and Steve's words gospel there with regards to his, how they didn't perhaps click all game. But Whittaker knows where the back of the net is. He knows how to strike a ball. And like Russell Martin said post-match, it'll do him the world of good. He probably wouldn't have even been aware before until he'd scored the hat-trick, probably coming off the pitch, about the fact that we hadn't scored one in so long. So it's great. It's nice to get that monkey off our back then, if you like. But still, the last league hat-trick is still standing there. That's waiting to be broken. So maybe we can go one better on the weekend and do that one as well. But no, all jokes aside, it's great to see that we finally scored one, because it's we didn't get one in the Premier League and we were there for a long time. So going back 10 years, it's quite some time since that last since Scott Sinclair took us up, really.
Yeah, the playoff final against Reading back in 2011, the last time a Swansea player scored a hat-trick. It's mad. Just to put in context, I've looked back through the record because I'm that sad. We were by far and away the team in the Football League with the longest run without a hat-trick scorer. The only one that came, well, the closest one to us then was Huddersfield, who haven't scored a hat-trick in a competitive match since 2014. But that's still, 3 years difference between ourselves and them. So they can take that kind of unwanted accolade now. Obviously, like you said, Matt, we're still waiting for a league hat-trick, which goes back to 2008, which is by far and away the longest drought in the in the entire 92. But Steve, why is it that we haven't been able to do this, do you think? Because other clubs do it on a regular basis. Most clubs, I think about 2/3 of the top 4 division have scored a hat-trick, in at least one hat-trick then in the last 2 or 3 seasons. We've had, since Scott Sinclair scored, 56 instances where a Swan has scored 2 goals in a single game, but none of them managed to get that extra goal. What on earth was the issue all these years?
It's hard to say, isn't it? I think it's just one of those freak things. I mean, it'd be interesting to see, wouldn't it, how many players who were on 2 goals got subbed off? Because I bet that's happened a few times, isn't it? I mean,
I can tell you now, it was 22 of them.
Well, that doesn't help, does it? I mean, you look at Nathan Dyer in the League Cup final, for example, probably the best chance a man's ever going to have to get one, and he wasn't given the pen, was he? And obviously, I know De Guzman chipped in with 2 goals in that, but one of them was in the last minute, for example, wasn't it? So, obviously the chances of a hat-trick at that point then are pretty slim. It is a strange one because we've had, players who are quite prolific goal scorers, haven't we? I mean, Michu obviously springs to mind. He scored a few braces, didn't he? Wilfred Boney the first time round. I think Llorente may have had a couple. I'm sure Sigurdsson has, for example, had a few braces. McBurney, obviously. So it's just got to be one of those freak things, really, isn't it? I always remember that it has happened previously. I mean, the first Swans hat-trick I ever saw was James Thomas against Hull. There's no better timing for one, but that was the first, if you look back to the records, I think that was the first one for 8 years, and something like the first home hat-trick for about 10 years. So we do seem to have had these spells, really, without goal scorers. But I think in that era, though, I think Trundle was the first man for 20 years to score 20 goals. So when you think of that little fact, it's probably not a big shock then that we didn't maybe score many hat-tricks. But, I mean, we have had decent strikers in recent years, so it is a surprise, isn't it, that it's taken so long? I mean, what can you say? I mean, it's interesting there. You're saying Huddersfield were the next longest. Doesn't surprise me because nearly everyone gets a hat-trick at some point, don't they? I mean, one of the great stats I heard was, I think, during the lockdown, that I think Anthony Martial may have scored one for Man United, and that was the first hat-trick post-Fergie, which, when you consider it's Man United, is absolutely staggering, isn't it? So I suppose it does happen from time to time. You get these weird things, but yeah, it would be nice to see a league one, wouldn't it? I mean, we're talking over 13 years, really. It's absolutely ridiculous, isn't it?
If I'm going in like proper going in on this and just trying to work out what's gone on, obviously that long spell in the Premier League where you're not going to be free scoring, particularly on a weekly basis, and there's going to be a lot of occasions if your player's got two, and you've managed to grab the lead, you're going to try and protect it. And I think when you're in the Premier League, that's vital because teams can hurt you so easily. On the years outside that, I mean, you could only really look at Ollie McBurney until now, couldn't you? And
well, Brewster.
Yeah, I suppose Brewster.
Bruce only scored one brace for us in the brief time that he was here. And by the way, going back to your Dyer point, no player has been subbed after scoring 2 goals more times than Dyer. So he scored 2 goals on 5 occasions, and on 4 of them, he wasn't allowed to finish the game. The most famous being, of course, the League Cup final.
Yeah, I was going to say, one of the ones where you think we probably had the best chance of a hat-trick was QPR on the opening day, wasn't it? Because Michu had scored 2 after about 55 minutes or something. So obviously he had a while, and then Dyer ended up getting 2. And if we're being honest, QPR just went to pieces. So there were definitely more goals in it for us. But yeah, I suppose that was an occasion where there were 2 players on hat-trick, but it just didn't happen, did it?
You'd have to dig right down and see how important those goals were, whether they give us 2 goal cushions in games or whether the game was already done. It may have been a different story if that brace came to make us score line 2-2, for example, or something like that, where it was game on. But I haven't done the research on this, so I'm just hypothesizing as to what the circumstances around them were. Guto, I don't know how deep you've gone to see where the results were lying at the time.
Yeah, I can't go that far really. Just on that point that you made, Steve, though, about James Thomas as being the first for a while, it actually wasn't. There was 1 hat-trick in 2000.
I meant the first one at home, that was.
Oh, right, yeah.
I'm going to say Savarese at Luton.
Savarese against Luton when we lost 5-3 away at their place. But before that, I mean, you are going back. Well, I couldn't find the last example.
I'm sure I remember reading before. It was Jason Bowen in 1993, something like that.
That's mad. I went back, I think, as far as 94, and then I couldn't. The records are poor from that point on.
Yeah, there's a book my father's got, and I remember reading it before. Basically, there was. But yeah, we're talking about that. The mad thing then is, though, like we're on about James Thomas scored that hat-trick. The opening day of the next season, Brad Maylett scores a hat-trick against Bury.
And then the next
league.
league.
And then Lee Trundle scores a hat-trick in the next one. You just think there can't be another team that's had 3 hat-tricks in 3 games in a row, and it's been 3 different players.
Oh, that's
just good. Watch out, Preston, then, are you?
Pardon?
Now's the chance for Cullen to get off the mark properly with 3 goals. It's now is the time to really build on that success. But that is true. I mean, 3 consecutive league games, 3 consecutive hat-tricks, 3 different scorers. I would love to know if there's another club out there who's done that, because that is some record.
Yeah, especially after we haven't done it for so long. That's typical Swans, that is. We always do things that are, bizarre both ways.
But I remember around about that stage, okay, we didn't have hat-tricks happening all the time, but we did go through a couple of years where we had a lot of hat-tricks. I mean, you had Trundle scored another one against Notts County, and that was the last one at the Vetch. But then the following season, you had Kevin McLeod in the 7-1 against Bristol City. You had Trundle scoring another one against Chesterfield. Leon Knight scored one within half an hour on his debut, and he scored another one against Chesterfield away. So we went through a stage, Matt, where actually we did have hat-tricks quite regularly, and I'll be honest, looking back, I probably took that for granted, just thinking, oh yes, normal, a club will have 3 or 4 hat-tricks in a season.
Yeah, we look at those players you mentioned, you're absolutely right, but though we had a ridiculously strong attack for League One, essentially, when you consider the likes of you've got your Trundles, your Leon Knights and your stuff like that, and your Brad Maylets, you have Kevin McLeod's. We were so attack-minded. We were the sort of team which you'd love to watch as a neutral, because Swans are going to win 4-2 or lose 3-0. It was just goals galore. There wasn't a massive amount of defense. There's definitely a red card in there as well somewhere, but it was just entertaining, wasn't it? We did take it for granted. We were looking at trying to keep the climbing up as we were at the time, climbing through the leagues. But that spell, that that moment in history, that Kenny Jack era of attacking football. That's going to go down as one of the more fun times of being a Swans fan in the last 25 years, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And just coming back to Morgan Whittaker there, Steve, there has been a little bit of speculation online. I'm not sure how serious it is, really, saying that he could be loaned out. Now that he has scored a hat-trick, would you think that we should actually be considering loaning him out? I mean, we've got quite a few attacking options, I guess, but none of them, I think we've discussed this before, particularly kind of eye-catching, particularly sensational. But now the players scored a hat-trick, albeit, in the dying stages of a League Cup match. Do you think it's worth keeping him in the hope that confidence boost can pay dividends?
I mean, at this stage, I'd keep him because we need to bring another body in, I think, if we're going to loan somebody out. I think it's sort of a tough one in some ways. I think a loan spell maybe in League One would probably benefit him long term, but then we've got to think about, do we need him now, or would that suit us better as well? That's the dilemma really for the manager. I think. Well, there was speculation, wasn't there, that he'd like to loan him out, so that could happen. It depends. I think if someone comes in, if another striker comes in, then I think that may well happen. But I mean, I'm looking at it. I think he should be in contention for Saturday, if nothing else, really, and see how he gets on then. But the difficulty then is, I suppose, if he does do well, then he probably isn't going to get loaned out because the window will be about to shut, and it would be a strange one to loan someone out who's on form like that.
Yeah, Matt, where do you stand on that issue? Do you think he'd benefit more from a loan move to, say, a club in League One, or do you think he has something to contribute in the first half of this season?
I'd keep him. I think, personal opinion, I'd get rid of Jamal Lowe if there is a potential buyer. He'd be the one I'd look to ship out purely because I don't think he will fit this system. I really don't see him as a Russell Martin type player. He hasn't really found his place on a football pitch for us either. Some say he's a winger, but I also don't see him, up and down the wing, whipping crosses in every game either. Probably an inside forward, but you get into that Andre Ayew territory then of, is he a striker, is he a winger? And there would be good money for Jamal Lowe. If a permanent offer came in, I've heard, we're looking in a few million. So if that's the case, then, the club could do with that. And then you look at the other options. I think Liam Cullen desperately needs a season of football, whether that be League Two or League One or wherever he can get every week football. Joel Pirot has obviously made a statement. He's scored 3 goals in 3 or 4 games for us. So, he's really laid down a marker for his starting position. But then you need to have options if things aren't going right off the bench. And a player who can come on, who can score a hat trick in League Cup game, then it's a nice option to have. Kyle Joseph, I didn't see last night's game, but Steve said he played wing back, which is interesting. Again, how Russell Martin sees him, because of course he didn't bring in Kyle Joseph. He was here before he arrived, so it would be interesting to see where he fits in the bigger picture as well. No, I'd keep hold of Whittaker. It also, of course, depends on what business we do between now and the end of the window, because there's still talk of us looking to reinforce our attacking options with at least 1, preferably 2 signings. And if that happens, that'll change the picture entirely.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I find it strange if we sent Whittaker out on loan. I'm not going to say that he's, the greatest player ever. I think he's clearly got a lot to learn and a lot of room to develop. But, he gives us something a little bit different. I think he's shown even in the early stages of this season at times that he can make a difference off the bench. I thought he made a bit of a difference when he came on against Blackburn, for example. He's got that little bit of pace, which is something we lack in the team. He's shown that he can nick a goal. I'd say we probably don't want to be starting with him, but off the bench, I think he does give us a little bit of an option. And if I'm being honest, if we're not going to be playing Cullen as a central striker, which I think is realistically the position where he's got the greatest potential to make it in this side, I'd be more open, like you said, boys, to sending him out on loan, because I don't think there's much point really in keeping him here if he's going to be playing out of position and not really having much of an impact on games. He may benefit a bit more from that break and that move down to a lower division for the time being. But we'll have to wait and see. There's still a little bit of time left of the transfer window. And plenty can happen, as we know from experience. Let's move on to a less savoury aspect of Tuesday night's match. It's reared its ugly head again. There was online racist abuse following the match. A tweet from the Swans drew a ridiculous response from one Twitter account, apparently, according to the bio, a Plymouth Argyle fan. But judging by the post, it seemed like that was the account's first post. So it may have just been some randomer looking to abuse a player for no apparent reason. But it's not the first time, boys, that we've had to deal with this. And it's just always so frustrating when this issue comes up again.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to know what to say, really, isn't it? I mean, I just don't know what's wrong with people. There's just no need for it, is it, at all? And I think the social media companies don't really clamp down on it, do they, as much as they should? And this individual needs to be taught a lesson, really, doesn't he? Because it's just not on.
Well, yeah, I think we had this, didn't we? Didn't we have exactly this conversation? Was it after the Cardiff game? Wasn't Whittaker the recipient of it then as well? I feel like this was something we definitely talked about.
We've seen it before with Cabango. We've seen it before with Lowe. We've seen it before with Dander. Whittaker's had it before. I mean, it's just depressing that
Yeah, so I seem to remember last time his girlfriend got a lot of abuse as well on social media, and they came off Twitter for a while, didn't they? It's a ridiculous situation. We've done this where we've talked before about we're not no power to make anything happen, but in terms of it starts and stops with the enforcement. I think we've all agreed on that before. If your punishment for creating an account, a dummy account, just to go on and racially abuse someone is to have that account deleted, then you're pretty much encouraging that behaviour, because that's not a deterrent at all. That is literally go and create another one next week and do it again, because until there's some stringent checks on account creation and making sure that everyone's identifiable, then this story will keep rearing its ugly head. For me, it's a societal problem, but it's not helped at all by the people running the social media companies that need to give the police some ammunition to go and seriously punish these people. And until that happens, unfortunately, we'll be talking about it again and again.
But Steve, what's the mentality of somebody that just their instinct is to go online and to just abuse a player for the colour of his skin? That nothing more. There was no kind of slight on Whittaker's footballing ability. It was strictly a racist gesture, directed at a player who it just happens to have a different skin colour to the person who is posting this. I mean, what goes through somebody's head, whatever their age, whether they are a kid, whether they are an adult? It's something I just can't get my head around.
And neither can I. I think that's the problem. I think a lot of people can't, but it just seems to be society, really, doesn't it, these days? I mean, look at what happened in the Euros, where obviously certain players missed the penalties for England, and it got mentioned again, didn't it? It's just, you almost feel like there's people out there waiting for something to happen and an opportunity to, openly be racist to anyone who's black. So what can you say, really? It's difficult to find the words, isn't it? But there's got to be proper punishments for people, because it just feels like it keeps happening, and people are getting away with it, really, aren't they? But I mean, you just can't relate to these people. I mean, they're just they're not right, are they?
Yeah, Joe, it felt for so long like football was making continuous strides forward in this department, and although it certainly hadn't gone away, racism was playing a less and less of a role in the game, and certainly over the last few years, I think we've seen the direction change in that respect, and it's gone decidedly in another direction. And unless something changes, like we've all said, in the way these things are dealt with, then it is going to continue, unfortunately. And I just feel sorry for these players who continuously have to put up with it, because you shouldn't just be turning on your phone and the first thing you see is somebody abusing you for the colour of your skin. You shouldn't have to put up with abuse per se anyway, but when it's racially motivated, it does just hit home that little bit harder. And it's disgusting, but until something gets done about it, it's not going to go away, unfortunately. So a sad note to end that Plymouth chat. We'll move on now to discuss Preston away on the weekend. So we've just won one away league game at Bristol City. Matt, can we make it 2 in a row?
Oh, we can. I imagine that Preston will want to have something to say about that. But they're the sort of team, and I say this sometimes, and I think I'm a parody of myself sometimes, but these are the sort of teams that you can beat away from home. They're not particularly threatening outfit, and I'm going to eat humble pie on next week's podcast probably. But certainly, it's a perfect time for us then. Put it this way. It's a perfect time for us to come in off the back of 2 wins, if you count the midweek game we just talked about as well. And, buzzing with confidence and renewed faith and belief in what we're trying to do and what Russell Martin's trying to integrate. And against a team who we could get the better of on the weekend.
Yeah, and Steve, Preston have had a strange start to the season. I'll be honest, I was tipping them for relegation at the start of the season. I thought new manager, squad didn't look particularly brilliant, and they started the season backing me up, really. They lost 4-1 on the opening day to Hull, lost 2-1 away at Reading, who are not the best team in the division, and then they lost away to Huddersfield, who again are not the best team in this division by any means. So you look at those opening results and you think, my God, this team is in trouble. But then they beat Preston last Saturday, who have not Preston, they beat Peterborough.
Yeah. I was going to say they beat themselves, did they? Beat
themselves, which is what they were probably doing the first 3 games. But beat Peterborough, and from what I saw, quite convincingly and deservingly of that result. And then they've gone and beaten Morecambe 4-2 in the cup, albeit I think they needed to go to extra time to achieve that. But just looking at what Preston fans are saying, suddenly those 2 wins have kind of lifted the mood, and they've given them this burst of positivity. And suddenly, those improved performances and those 2 wins, they're gonna have a bit of confidence. And this actually may not be the best time to be playing them.
Well, possibly not. But I mean, as you say, I don't think they're a team that are going to be in the upper reaches of the division. So, yeah, as much as obviously they now have gone off and running, you always worry with the Swans if they're on a bad run that we would end it. So, I think we'll see. I don't think they're a great side, as I've said. I mean, they don't really have many standout players or anything. The manager, I think, is it his first job? I know he's coached in quite a few places, hasn't he? Frankie McAvoy.
Yeah, he took over as caretaker after Alex Neil was left the club last season, and he did a decent job of stabilising them. Of course, they beat us 1-0 in that awful run we were on of 4 straight defeats last season. So, he does know how to beat us. And of course, Steve, they've got a former Swansea player in Scott Sinclair, which is always dangerous. He scored against us in the past as well.
Yeah, that's right. I was looking at their team just now, and that was a name that sort of jumped off the page, really. I mean, it's getting on a bit now, isn't he, Scott Sinclair? But, I'm sure he'll still pop up with a goal every so often, and typically he'll probably be against us, won't it? But I noticed Ched Evans is there. I mean, obviously he's been a Fleetwood, hasn't he, the last couple of years. It's a bit of a surprise, really, that he's gone up a division. But
I think the striking position has been their problem for years, hasn't it? I mean, they've got Emil Rees, who scored against Morecambe, who's a big striker and, looks like he can cause a few problems. But I'm not sure, again, if he's the answer to the goal problems they've had from their strikers. They just never seem to find that one striker who's going to get them the goals needed to make a difference.
Yeah, I mean that's probably a problem for a lot of sides, isn't it? Obviously, we really had a problem with strikers last year, didn't we? I know we sort of got away with it a little bit, but that probably was the missing link for us. I mean, it's the usual stuff in football, really, isn't it? Everybody needs a striker that can bang the goals in, and that has been an issue for Preston. I mean, they've been back in this division about 6 or 7 years, I think, because obviously they went down. I think they went down the year that we went up to the Prem, but not really threatened massively to go up, because I remember certainly during the early 2000s, that's when they were a good side, and they did. I think they lost a couple of playoff finals around that time, but they've probably leveled out really now at this level, and but I think they'll be looking more over their shoulders at the bottom than towards the top. So I think it's definitely a game that we can win. I think we're going to be quite an unpredictable side this year in general, because I don't think anyone really expected us to go to Ashton Gate and get a clean sheet after what was a bit of a shambolic defensive display against Stoke. So it's going to be a hard one to call, I think, but I think it could go either way.
And Matt, obviously the team's been chopped and changed in the first few weeks of the season, and injuries and COVID, etc., haven't helped in that respect. But what do you think? Who are the players that you'd like to see start the game against Preston? Do you think actually we should pretty much stick with what we had against Bristol City?
Yeah, by and large, I think there is a genuine question mark over current suitability at the moment, and that's that it's form and it's being without a great deal of experience under his belt. There's a lot of questions which perhaps time will help answer for him. But yeah, the team is quite strong in a lot of areas. I really like, someone touched upon it a little bit earlier on about Ryan Manning playing in the back three as well, because what we noticed at Blackburn in particular was the defence. We want to bring it out from defence, but we didn't have much in the terms of ball-playing defenders. The one in the back three that day, who you thought would have been great at it, was Latabaudiere, and he almost scored an unbelievable own goal after a minute. So I think all in all, that day was probably a little bit of an eye opener for Russell Martin as well, in terms of what he's got to work with at the back, and really trying to. It's where everything he wants to start. He's already admitted in press conferences he wants to build from the back before he concentrates up the pitch, and he's been tweaking it a little bit. Brandon Cooper's come in. He's done reasonably well for a young player as well, and Ryan Manning slotted back there. So you can see he's trying things out, and it's important, I think, for his style that we get that ball playing defence, because everything he wants to do starts at the back, and it's great to see when it comes off. It just needs a bit of tweaking. The things look much more solid, as Steve mentioned earlier on, against Bristol City. So I don't see massive amount of changes. And of course, it's all gone a little bit quiet on the transfer front, which we may discuss in a little bit. But absolutely. In terms of the starting 11, I'd make maybe one or two changes. We look at a couple of the players as well have been out with COVID. Cal Norton may be back in contention and stuff. So he's another player who is a very good ball-playing defender, so he might be an option that Russell Martin looks to use, and go from there, really. It's not a case of wholesale changes, and it similarly won't be a case of stick with the same 11, because I do think there was room for improvement against Bristol City. We'll just see maybe two changes from that game, perhaps.
Yeah, and Steve, how important is it that we go into the international break on the back of a decent result against Preston?
It wouldn't be the end of the world if it ended in defeat, but I think it would be frustrating now that we've got off and running if we didn't manage to build on that and come away with at least a point, really. So, I think that's what we'll be looking for, isn't it? I mean, and our record, if we're honest, after international breaks is quite bad in general. So, it would be nice to come away with something and, keep hopefully go on a little bit of a run.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Let's get predictions out the way. I think I've got every single prediction wrong this season so far. So I don't know if anybody's keeping tabs, but if you are, then I'm definitely bottom of the leaderboard. I'll go first this time. I'm I'll go for a 1-1 draw. I think Preston have just had a little bit more confidence of late. Going away, we're still, in that developmental phase, even after that win against Bristol City. I'd take a 1-1 draw, and I'll go for a 1-1. Matt, what about you?
I think Preston may get 38% of the ball in this game. I think we're going to really try and step up our philosophy again. And I think whilst it's not going to be a walk in the park, I think we'll be able to get over the line. I'll say a 1-0 away win.
Steve, what about you?
I'm going to say the same as you, a 1-1 draw, which I think would be a decent enough result.
Consecutive clean sheets in the league, that would be a heck of a result as well. Well, hopefully you're right and I'm wrong, and hopefully the Swans can head into the international break on the back of a really positive result. We're just going to have a quick chat now about that international break. Steve, Wales back in action for the first time since the Euros. They've got a friendly coming up against Finland, which, quite frankly, we're not going to discuss because it's pointless. We're going to be playing in the reserves. Nobody really cares what happens in that game. But then we've got 2 qualifiers coming up against Belarus and Estonia. I think it's fair to say that these are the 2 weakest teams in the group. What would be an acceptable return from these games?
Well, I know you love the phrase "must win," but
just say it.
It's got to be 6 points, isn't it? Like, we can't be looking at anything else. I mean, both sides they're not going to qualify. They're no real threat in the group. We need a clean sweep against them. We can't say that anything other than that would be acceptable, really. So we need to go to Russia, where we're playing Belarus, and win, and then we need to beat Estonia at home. If we don't do that, it's not good enough. Really, it's fairly straightforward, I would say.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I don't think anything less than 6 points is really acceptable from these games. These are clearly the 2 weakest teams in the division, in the group. Belarus have a very young squad. Only 8 of them are into double figures when it comes to caps. None of them have scored more than 4 goals for their country. And they've not got a great record on the whole. They beat Estonia 4-2 in their last home game, but then went on to lose 8-0 against Belgium. And similarly, Estonia, 1 competitive win since the 2018 World Cup campaign. They've not got any players, either of these teams, playing for big European clubs or even in big European leagues. Most of their players play in their domestic leagues, which aren't very strong. Estonia lost 6-2 to the Czech Republic in their first game before losing 4-2 to Belarus. They're going to be at a low ebb. Matt, we got to win these, haven't we?
Well, yeah, completely echoing what Steve said and just adding to it that realistically Belgium and Czech Republic are going to have no problem with them. They've had no problem with them. So if we have a problem with them, that really points picture of how this qualifying campaign is going to go for us. So it doesn't have to be convincing. Of course, at the end of the day, it's just the points on the board. It would be nice if they were. It looks bad for Wales if they don't register 6 points in these games. And we've been watching Wales, if you go back to like the Bobby Gould time and stuff like that, we've had some shocking results. Let's hope that we don't see a repeat of that in the next couple of weeks.
Steve, you mentioned there we are going to be playing out in Russia because of the political situation with Belarus. We're not allowed to play in Belarus, and Russia is one of the few countries which will allow this game to go ahead, without too much hassle. It's not just Russia; it's Kazan, which is 2,100 miles away from Wales. To put that into context, there are parts of Canada which are closer to Wales than Kazan. I mean, in what is a very busy international period anyway, how much is that travelling going to hamper us?
It's not great, is it? You can't look at it in any other way. It's a long way. Obviously we've got that friendly with Finland, which probably doesn't help either. So we may well go from Finland directly to Kazan. I mean, it's not brilliant. I don't think we can use it as an excuse. I will say that much, though. I mean, we've got to get the job done, haven't we? I mean, I'd like to think that it won't affect us enough to cause a problem. But I mean, we'd be lying if we said it was ideal as well, wouldn't we? Belarus is a fair enough trek, but going to Kazan is probably adding another couple of hours to the flight. So it's not what we would want, but we've got to get on with it. I think Belgium are playing them there as well. So yeah, it's not just us, but it is irritating, isn't it? I mean, we wouldn't want to be going there in an ideal world, but again, it does feel a bit like at the moment we're getting a little bit stitched up with these things, and yeah, we've got to get on with it and make sure that we still do the job, even though the circumstances are not ideal.
And Matt, in terms of the group itself, Belgium and the Czech Republic, like you said, they lead the way. Belgium have 7 points. Czech Republic have 4. We're one behind the Czechs with 3 points, although we've played a game less than them. This is the first game that we've played since the Euros. Do you think what impact do you think the Euros will have on Wales's chances? Obviously, we're playing against we're competing against 2 countries who went, I think, further than us in the competition. Yes, I think both of them did. I'm going to say. So will it do us a bit of confidence the way the Euros went, or do you think actually it'll be difficult to get going again after that tournament?
The Euros were weird, weren't they? We talked about this just after, didn't we? We said on analysis, we only won 1 game, so it was kind of hard to really understand where that kind of momentum of Euro 2016 came from again, and that feeling of that, together stronger, because we hadn't really done a great deal, truth be told. That said, that tournament's over now. This isn't a branch off from that tournament. We need to be looking at this as a clean slate, a new opportunity to qualify for a World Cup at the end of the day, and create history for the country. And so hopefully, like you say we got a game in hand over Czech Republic with a point behind. So it gives us an opportunity to, once these fixtures have died down, to have leapfrogged them and put ourselves in a position of strength. And when you come up against the tough teams, you can you win some and you lose some, whatever. But it's the teams that you've got to pick up points against, and that's what these 2 fixtures are that are coming up. And the less I believe, the less they dwell on the Euros, the better, because it's I don't think there's a massive amount to take from it, if I'm honest.
And Steve, just one little interesting bit from the squad. No Swansea City players in it. That is down to injury and illness, of course. But you'd have thought that both Cabango and Roberts would have been in that squad if they were fit and healthy to do it. But I think it must be the first time in well over a decade that the Swans haven't had any kind of representation. You're probably going back to, our days in League One to find the last time that we didn't have a single player in the Wales senior squad.
Yeah, it would be a long time, wouldn't it? But like you say, it's circumstances, isn't it? I mean, if Connor was fit, he'd be in there, and if Cabango didn't have COVID, the same thing, really, isn't it? So it's one of those things. It is a little bit disappointing, isn't it? It's always nice to see us have a couple of players in there, but I'm sure one of them at least will be back in the next squad. So hopefully they'll go on another long run then of having players in squads as well.
And Matt, like clockwork, the squad was announced, and Juventus released a statement saying that Aaron Ramsey had been injured. I mean, it is frustrating, isn't it? Because we did have performances in the Euros, the one performance against Turkey, which was sensational. You looked at him and Bale linking up, and you saw the real potential there. And there's no doubt that we are capable of playing so much better when he is in the squad. But this is something that just happens all the time, isn't it? The squad's and he's not able to join us, or at least not able to play a full part.
Gets away with a lot, Aaron Ramsey. He's a likable guy, and I get that. And but as much as I have a great disdain for Ryan Giggs as a person and as a manager, as you know, he got a lot of stick, and rightly so. But Ramsey seems to be immune from a lot of it, which is a bit baffling, to be honest with you, because he just doesn't seem to turn up for anything other than the major games, which does strike a bit of a chord as in terms of talking about Ryan Giggs. But yeah, it's a shame because look at our two most talented players in Wales of the last 10 years or so, him and Gareth Bale, and their attitudes or their availability, at least for Wales, couldn't be more stark, in terms of contrast. One would play with half his leg hanging off, and the other just needs to have had a cold in the last 6 months to be unavailable. So it's a real shame. He is one of the Wales' strongest players, as we know, and he provides that link between midfield and up front, which is vital for Gareth Bale to get in the game a lot of the time. So, but that's the way his career's going, and there'll be when he retires, there will always be that thing where he'll go. He was immense when he played, but certainly towards the latter years, maybe he didn't make himself as available as he should.
Yeah, and final question, Steve. Robert Page, he obviously took over in difficult circumstances during the Euros. He's been allowed to retain that position. Is that the right decision in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we should make a change at this stage. I think, the Denmark game, as we said previously, was quite a frustrating one. I thought we were poor on the day. You can't look at it any other way, really. But at the same time, I think Page has got a lot of results. I think some of the performances haven't probably been the best, but hard to beat. And it would be very difficult to argue on making a change. And I mean, it's going to be tough to make a change at this stage anyway, really, because of the whole situation with Ryan Giggs. So I think we should certainly stick with him for now. And then at the end of that court case, see how that goes and make a decision really about the long term after that.
Yeah, well, hopefully, of course, Wales can get those 6 points, which they probably need against the two minnows in the group, despite the travelling to the deepest, darkest Russia in what is yet again a ridiculously packed international break. But yeah, like I said, hopefully they can get the results, and then we can get back to club action then after the international break with the visit of Hull City to the Liberty Stadium. So hopefully you can join us next time when we'll be discussing everything that's gone on in Preston with Wales and looking ahead to the visit of the Tigers. But until then, thank you very much for listening.